You talk to yourself in the shower. You apologized to a chair last week out loud. You name your houseplants and feel genuinely guilty when one dies. Society says that's weird. Science says, you might just be built different. There are 8 strange habits that psychologists and researchers have quietly linked to above-average intelligence. And the weirder the habit, the stronger the connection tends to be. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're either going to feel extremely validated or deeply concerned about your friends. Look, intelligence doesn't always come wrapped in a lab coat and a Stanford diploma. Sometimes it looks like a grown adult muttering grocery lists to themselves at the store. Sometimes it looks like someone who gets personally offended when people misuse the word literally. Sometimes it looks like a lot of browser tabs and a very complicated color-coded notebook that only makes sense to one person on Earth. In this video, we're breaking down 8 habits that look odd from the outside but are actually backed by real psychological research. We're covering everything from why you talk to yourself to why you go completely silent for hours, and why both of those things are signs your brain is working overtime. These aren't theories. These are peer-reviewed studies, published research, and expert findings. So let's get into it. All right, let's start with the one that makes people slowly back away from you at the grocery store talking to yourself out loud. You're not crazy. You're not lonely. You're basically running a staff meeting with yourself, for yourself, by yourself. The agenda, whatever's going wrong in your brain right now. And honestly, it's one of the most efficient things you can do. So why do people do it? And why does it apparently make you smarter? Researchers at Bangor University in the UK ran a study where participants were given written instructions and told to either read them silently or out loud. The people who read out loud showed better concentration and absorbed information more effectively. The co-author, psychologist Dr. Paloma Mari Beffa, explained that the benefit likely comes from simply hearing yourself because auditory commands are stronger behavioral controllers than written ones. A separate 2023 study published in the journal Behavioral Sciences found a significant link between inner speech use and better self-regulation and clearer self-identity. In other words, people who talk to themselves had a stronger sense of who they were and better control over their own behavior. That's not a quirk. That's a cognitive advantage. Even Einstein reportedly mumbled constantly to himself. And athletes use it too. Sports psychologists have documented that self-talk reduces anxiety and boosts performance in everything from tennis to surfing. 96% of adults experience some form of internal dialogue. The ones who actually say it out loud are just brave enough to do it in public. Psychologists call it externalized metacognition, thinking about your thinking out loud. Brain imaging research has actually shown measurable differences in how people process cognitive tasks based on whether their internal dialogue is active or not. You're not talking to yourself because you're losing it. You're talking to yourself because your brain is trying to build a blueprint for whatever complex thing you're working through. Caught talking to your toaster? That's fine. Some ideas just need an audience. And the smartest person available was already in the room. You bump into a chair and apologize to it. You name your car. You feel legitimately guilty throwing away an old mug because you've had it since college and it's been through some things with you. This isn't being overly sensitive. This is called anthropomorphism, assigning human qualities to non-human things. And it's directly linked to creativity, emotional intelligence, and social processing ability. Here's where it gets interesting. A 2019 study in Frontiers in Psychology found strong positive relationships between emotional intelligence and empathic perspective-taking. And a Science Direct study on pro-social behavior found that higher intelligence is directly linked to greater emotional sensitivity and concern for others. The people who feel these things most deeply, even toward objects, tend to have brains that are highly tuned to social signals. Your brain is projecting emotional frameworks onto everything around you. That's not a malfunction. That's your emotional processing system running at full capacity. Pixar figured this out and built an empire on it. Toys that have feelings, cars with personalities, a lamp that's just trying its best. People don't just watch those movies, they sob. Because the emotional framework is real. and for some people it never fully turns off, even around actual furniture. You're not over the top. You're just running a really high-resolution emotional operating system. It takes serious bandwidth to worry about the feelings of your refrigerator, but that same bandwidth is what makes you an exceptional friend, a natural storyteller, and the person who always notices when something's off in a room before anyone else does. You speak the language, you know the social rules, but you always feel like you're watching the party from the window instead of being in it. You laugh a beat too late. You catch yourself analyzing conversations instead of just having them. For a long time, this gets labeled as awkwardness or social anxiety, but researchers have a different name for it: cultural frame switching. It's a cognitive trait most common in people who naturally move between social worlds, either literally, like someone who grew up between two cultures, or psychologically, like someone whose inner world is just a lot busier than most. When you're standing slightly outside the group, you're not missing the experience. You're documenting it. You see the micro behaviors, the hidden power dynamics, the weird unspoken scripts everyone's following without realizing it. You're not lost in the sauce, you're studying the recipe, and occasionally side-eyeing the chef. This outsider perspective is where original thinking comes from. The most disruptive ideas in history, in art, science, business, politics, rarely came from the person at the center of the room. They came from the person at the edge who was paying attention while everyone else was performing. So yeah, maybe you're not on the guest list, but you've got the clearest view in the building. You cry over injustice. You lose sleep over logical contradictions. Someone uses literally to mean figuratively, and your whole body has a response. Ideas don't just intellectually interest you, they physically move you. This is called moral intensity, and it's well documented in high-intelligence research. A study published in Science Direct found that highly intelligent individuals are more likely to self-identify as moral people, and that higher intelligence is directly linked to greater emotional sensitivity, concern for others, and pro-social behavior. Another study on gifted individuals from Mensa, published in the Journal of Intelligence, found that people with high IQs often display emotional hypersensitivity, a heightened response to both sensory and emotional input. This isn't instability. It's the brain's reward system firing hard when abstract values, fairness, truth, logic get violated. You don't just know what's right, you feel it. That's not a design flaw. Every major social movement, piece of meaningful art, and ethical breakthrough in history was driven by someone who cared way too much about an abstract idea. That's the cost of being someone whose brain doesn't just think, it feels its way to the truth. Yeah, it makes dinner conversations intense sometimes, but it also makes you someone who actually fights for better. You will write a beautiful, thoughtful 4-paragraph message, and then you will dodge a phone call like it's a surprise pop quiz you never signed up for. This is not social anxiety. This is structural thinking, and science actually backs it up. Research published in the Journal of Research and Personality found that personality traits, particularly introversion, meaningfully influence communication preferences, with writing being the format where these individuals express themselves most clearly and honestly. A Harvard study found that humans are naturally visual thinkers, and for many people, translating internal images into spontaneous spoken words is genuinely harder than converting them into writing. Writing gives you the one thing live conversation never will: a delete key. In conversation, ideas are slippery. You say something, it comes out wrong, and you spend the next 3 days mentally replaying it. On a keyboard, you can pin the idea down, shape it, and send exactly what you mean. That's not avoidance, that's precision engineering for your thoughts. Think about it this way: talking is improv, writing is architecture, and smart people tend to prefer buildings over performances. Asynchronous communication gives you control over pacing, tone, and clarity. For a sharp mind, that's not just a preference, it's a requirement. And honestly, the phone call can wait. The text you sent was better anyway. Someone cuts in line and you spend the next 45 minutes quietly seething about it. Someone on TV contradicts something they said 6 months ago, and you notice immediately. Your jaw literally tenses up. This is your internal value system throwing a flag on the play. Research from Science Direct found that highly intelligent people are more likely to have developed complex ethical frameworks, and when the world violates those frameworks, it triggers a reaction that's closer to physical than emotional. You're not being dramatic. You're running high-resolution moral processing software, and someone just introduced a bug. The same Mensa study on gifted individuals confirmed that emotional hypersensitivity, including moral sensitivity, is one of the most consistently reported traits in high IQ populations. It can make everyday life feel like a minefield, but it's also the engine behind virtually every meaningful social reform in history. You don't just want justice, you require it, like oxygen for your soul, which makes you exhausting to argue with and exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. You walk into a room and immediately know three things. Someone's annoyed at someone else, the laughter is a little too forced, and that one-word reply you got an hour ago definitely meant something. People say you're too sensitive. What they actually mean is that you're picking up on signals they don't even know are being broadcast. The Journal of Intelligence study on Mensa members found that highly intelligent individuals are significantly more likely to experience sensory processing sensitivity, a heightened response to both emotional and environmental stimuli. Brain imaging research has confirmed that this sensitivity is neurological, not theatrical. Your pattern detection system is simply running at a higher resolution than most people's. You're basically fluent in a language no one bothered to formally teach you. Micro-expressions, tone shifts, the energy in a room before anyone says a word. It's like having a second nervous system that's purely social. Yes, your radar never fully turns off, and yes, that's exhausting. But it also means you're the one person in the room who can always tell when someone's lying about being fine. You're a human lie detector, a party mood thermometer, and a team vibe translator all in one. That's not being too sensitive. That's being exactly calibrated. You disappear for hours. You forget to respond to messages for an entire afternoon. You stare out the window looking like you've received bad news when actually you're just thinking really, really hard. Psychology Today notes that some psychologists believe extended internal processing can be a sign of superior cognitive functioning when the mind isn't wandering but actively working. What looks like zoning out is often what researchers call incubation, the brain quietly assembling connections below the level of conscious awareness. This is why your best ideas come in the shower, or on a walk, or at 2 a.m. when your brain suddenly finishes a problem you forgot you were working on. That aha moment, it was loading the whole time. You just didn't see the progress bar. In a culture obsessed with busyness and output, silence reads as laziness. But for a lot of high-functioning minds, silence is actually the most productive thing on the schedule. If someone calls you too quiet, you can tell them, silence isn't empty, it's loading. And what comes out the other side of that silence? The fully formed insight, the solved problem, the idea that shifts everything is usually worth the wait. Two final habits, and they're worth combining because they come from the same place. First, you cannonball into bizarre obsessions. 1 week you've watched every documentary about Viking shipbuilding. The next, you're 3 levels deep into the history of Mongolian throat singing. You don't dip a toe, you go full deep dive, spreadsheet and all. Second, you've invented your own organizational systems that make complete sense to exactly one person you. Your notes look like a conspiracy board. Your color code is in a language you invented. Your calendar is technically a masterpiece, but a doctor would probably recommend some kind of intervention. Both of these come from the same trait. A brain that doesn't just want to know things, it wants to understand them, and then rebuild them in its own architecture. Curiosity like this has been documented in some of the most innovative people in history, from Darwin's obsession with barnacles to Janelle Monáe's self-built conceptual universe. The weird obsession is how original ideas get born. The private system is how a complex mind makes the world manageable. It's not a mess. It's a masterpiece in progress, and you're the only one qualified to read the instructions. So here's where we've landed. You talk to yourself, that's externalized metacognition. You apologize to furniture, that's high emotional intelligence. You always feel like an outsider, that's advanced pattern recognition. You get emotionally wrecked by abstract ideas that's moral intensity. You dodge phone calls that's structural thinking. You rage at hypocrisy that's a deeply calibrated ethical system. You're too sensitive. That's social radar most people don't have. You go silent for hours, that's cognitive incubation. And you've built an entire private system for organizing your life that no one else can decode, that's abstract intelligence doing what it does best. None of these things are flaws, they're features. The world just hasn't caught up to the manual yet. Comment below. Which one of these hits closest to home? I'm genuinely curious whether it's the self-talk, the empathy for objects, or the silent disappearing act, because based on this comment section, we might be building the world's most self-aware community on YouTube. If this video made you feel understood, subscribe. We cover psychology, behavior, and the weird science behind why people are the way they are. And the next video, you're going to want to see it.